we'll have more opportunities to speak, and certainly I want this session to be as interactive as possible, so we'll have also a Q&A session at the end, which will enable all of us to participate and ask questions of our colleagues and panelists. As I said, this session is focusing really on global citizenship education. Just very quickly, the way this is going to work, I'm going to set the scene very briefly, and then I'll introduce each of our speakers in turn. They will make a short statement based on their own experience and where they're coming from in terms of global citizenship education. And then afterwards, we will have an initial conversation among our panelists. And for the last part of this session, we will go to the floor for questions. And then we'll wrap up in the last 5 minutes when I'll be asking each of our panelists for their recommendations. And the UN Alliance of Civilizations team will gather this for the report that will follow this event. So, the notion of global citizenship seems a very modern one to us, but in fact it goes back to Greek antiquity. Stoics thought of themselves as citizens of the world because beyond their duties in their own city, they felt bound to values and responsibilities that they all shared, not simply with their neighbors, but with humankind in general. Values of respect for human beings and understanding that we are part of a greater whole and that we're all part of a greater whole. But what does it mean today to be a citizen of the world? The meaning, as far as I see it, is both obvious and quite intriguing. It's obvious because regardless of which country we're born in and regardless of which passport we carry, we are, after all, human beings. We're citizens of the earth, citizens of the world. But it's also intriguing because the world is not a country, and therefore, as such, it doesn't have any citizens. So as citizens of a country, it's clear what our duties and responsibilities are, right? I mean, we have a duty to vote, to respect the laws of the land, we have to pay taxes, at least in certain countries we do, it's quite clear what we need to do as citizens. What are the kinds of duties that we have as citizens of the world? As world citizens, our duty is not within our own neighborhood only, or our own community, or our own city, or even our own country. We have duties that connect us with the whole of humanity. In other words, being a citizen of the world means that we make it our problem that 16,000 children die of hunger every day. It means that we make it our problem that there are over 40 deadly conflicts raging in the world today. It means that we make it our problem that 57 million children of primary school age have not seen the walls of a classroom. And it means that we make it our problem that every 24 hours, 150 species of plants, insects, birds, and mammals disappear because of climate change. But if that's what it is, and this is up to question, and I'm really looking to our panel for further definitions of what it is to be a citizen of the world, what does it mean to educate young people to see the ills of the world as their own problem? What kinds of skills do they need in order to tackle the challenges that the world is facing today? How do they develop an awareness of these challenges, and how do they build their determination to address them? And even more importantly, how can young people be empowered to find their own solutions to these challenges in order to shape the world in their own image, not necessarily in the image of their predecessors or their parents' generation, including myself? So in order to guide us through this maze and help us find answers to these questions, we have an impressive panel of experts and thinkers. And so I will start by introducing our first speaker, José Ruy Velves Caroso, who is the Executive Director of the North-South Center of the Council of Europe. Created in 1989, the North-South Center was set up in Lisbon in order to spread the universal values upheld by the Council of Europe, in other words, human rights, democracy, the rule of law, beyond the European continent itself. The mission of the North-South Center is to empower civil society, in particular youth and women. Previously, José Caroso served as Consul General of Portugal in Boston for 5 years. He has an impressive international experience as a Portuguese diplomat, and over 27 years he was working in Europe, in Africa, and in the Americas, acquiring a vast experience in both bilateral and multilateral affairs. José Caroso, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good morning, and first of all, it's really a pleasure to be here at the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, and especially in this breakout session dealing with the global citizenship education. That is one of the subjects that we at the North-South Center of the Council of Europe in Lisbon are more focused and try to really work on it. So if you allow me, very briefly, I will just say who we are and also what we do and how we do it, and then some very final considerations to then, of course, to engage in a dialogue and in the time, of course, for questions and answers and debating. So, as you rightly said, the North-South Center of the Council of Europe was created in 1989. And so next year it will be his 30th anniversary. And the name, the correct name of this institution is the European Center for Global Interdependence and Solidarity of the Council of Europe. So those notions of global interdependence and solidarity, of course, are the purpose to spread the universal values, namely of the Council of Europe itself, in terms of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law beyond the European continent. So, to promote the dialogue between the North and South, to foster solidarity, to raise awareness. So this is an enlargement partial agreement because we have at the center not only member states that are from the Council of Europe, but member states that don't belong to the Council of Europe. And we also work in what we call 4 pillars, if we may say so, because it's the national authorities, not only at national level, but also at the regional and local level. And also the parliamentarian dimension, which so also with legislative. And last but not the least, the civil society, the NGOs, the academia, the individuals themselves. So at the time when the center was created, it was at the end of the Cold War, and we speak a lot about the end of the East and the West, and then all the discussions that were at the time in the UN between North and South. Nowadays, North and South, perhaps it's not the best to describe, because we always say if you just see the hearse, or we could put upside down, we don't know where is the north, where is the south, and it depends, and this is also something also to discuss and to debate, which is north in some case, it's south in the other case, so it will really depends on the perspective, so we put more the emphasis, of course, in the global interdependence and solidarity as a whole. So what we do, being our mission to empower the civil society through the intercultural dialogue and to really create a global citizenship education. And the reason why, of course, we are here. So the North-South Center, through its capacity building and advocacy program in the field of global education and global citizenship, is targeting the practitioners in a particular formal or non-formal education and youth leaders, so policymakers, in order to contribute to the empowerment and the democratic participation of the civil society, in particular youth and women and the diaspora. In its activities, we privilege a multilateral and bottom-up approach to strive for gender balance and use soft power tools to promote the values and that are at the core of the Council of Europe and the United Nations and the priorities of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So our activities are based in a peer learning approach, bringing together stakeholders of different professional and cultural backgrounds to meet, debate, build their capacity and cooperate, so to celebrating diversity through an intercultural learning process. So the themes of the North-South Center International Forums and content is the training schemes and of its pedagogical tools and policy recommendations. They tackle issues such as gender equity, human rights, civic responsibility and participation, and promote competence in the field of intercultural dialogue, conflict prevention, human rights, and democratic participation. So, global education and the global citizenship education is for us understood as an holistic education growing and interconnected between local and the global realities. So it helps learners to deal with the cultural variety of language, with identities, codes, the mutual understanding that can be achieved. So really promote the intercultural understanding, multi-perspective, and the deconstruction of stereotypes that we know are that is really needed, especially nowadays. So this intercultural dialogue is contribute to enhance the cooperation, to conflict prevention, and to a peaceful coexistence. So we are in our work also responding to the Council of Europe Action Plan, the fight against violent extremism and radicalization that sometimes, as you know, with the very unfortunate results that we all know. And also following the action plan on building inclusive societies. So our expertise has been recognized also by the European Union, because we also have programs with the European Commission of the European Union, namely, and you know all the international organizations, they love acronyms, so we have a program that it's called I-Legend, that it means I Intercultural Learning Exchange through Global Education Network and Dialogue, the I-Legend. So what it means, it's to foster the quality of education, to promote peaceful and inclusive societies, mainly through global development education and intercultural dialogue. So we are aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, namely the goal 4.7 for the promotion of global citizenship, the goal 5 for the promotion of gender equality, the goal 16 to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, or the goal 17 to strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. So this is the work that we develop in the field of global education to contribute to the consolidation of a democratic culture that we are aiming for, and to practice this global citizenship. So how we do it? Of course, we do it through events, through initiatives, through networks and pool of experts to put together people that coming for very different backgrounds, either from the public administration, the civil society, the parliamentarians, and to really around one team, around one subject, in order to make the advocacy, the awareness, and the capacity building. We also work a lot nowadays with the digital and the social media network, the e-learning, and also in the base of what we call the global education guidelines. As you know, the Council of Europe has a lot of expertise on that matter, on the concept of democratic culture, and through the exchange and the networking, namely what we call the network universities of youth and global citizenship. So we have, For instance, and I just give two main examples, what we call an university on youth and development that always take place each time 1 year. This one in Spain. It took place last time in the Molina in the Andalusia. And for instance, in September, when I was there, around 200 young people coming from everywhere were debating the Sustainable Development Goal 16 to peace, justice, and strong institutions. Last year, they were debating the developing global identities. Year before, connecting identities. And they have been doing this for the past 19 years. Next year, it will be the 20th edition. And we also have, for instance, with the same scope, more or less the same structure, what we call the Mediterranean University on Youth and Global Citizenship that has been taking place in Tunisia, in the city of Hammamet for the past 5 years. We have also, and I also invite you to see, just Google North-South Center, of course, of the Council of Europe, and you see through our websites what we have in terms of the web page and the global citizenship education projects and all the people that are dealing and the pool of experts. For instance, right now, precisely during this week, starting on the 19th and going until the 25th of November, you have the Global Education Network all across Europe. So we do, of course, and we'd like to, and I will have time later on to explain more our activities, but just for you to have a little bit a sense, and I think that much time perhaps than words, images are really better and explain and convey the message. I will invite you to just see a very brief, short movie about one of our activities with youth coming from, at this special occasion for more than 50 countries all around the world. Thank you so much.
Welcome to the 19th edition of the University on Youth and Development.
For me, Molina is that magical, transformative place that if you let it, it changes you completely.
This year we have more than 200 participants. They are young activists, decision makers, policy makers, representative institutions. They are all here in different moments to understand how to work together, to understand how it's important to build inclusive society through trainings, networking, and capacity buildings.
We are in the 19th edition. There are already lots of good stories to tell. Next year it will be the 20th anniversary, and I think that this is a path that we are pursuing, and as they said, the future lay ahead of us, and the best part is still to come.
Sabemos que la participación juvenil en asociaciones, organizaciones y plataformas es una escuela de democracia. Para nosotros, esa conciencia de la democracia, esa conciencia ciudadana es muy importante, con lo que es un objetivo prioritario fomentar la participación de los jóvenes. Por lo tanto, apoyar esta escuela es apoyar esa participación de los jóvenes, entonces los objetivos son similares.
I think the most essential objective should be to help people understand democracy, to give them the reasons, the knowledge, the skills to engage in democracy, because without people who are engaged in democracy, who take part, who are empowered to do so, institutions will not work. They have to recognize and accept these institutions as something that is there to protect them, to protect their rights, to protect their freedom, their stability and security. But in order to understand that importance, in order to exert pressure also on the politicians and make sure that these institutions do function in that way, they need these knowledges and skills that events like this in Molina are extremely effective way to propagate and disseminate.
People are coming here to change the world, and they realize that if they change themselves, this is really the beginning.
It's not Las Vegas. What happens in Molina should not stay in Molina.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Caruso, for these inspiring words. Does the mic work? Okay. So I'd now like to introduce Chantal Lynn Carpentier. Mrs. Carpentier is a Canadian citizen. She currently serves as chief of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development in the New York office of the Secretary General. Prior to 2014, Mrs. Carpentier greatly enhanced the engagement of all non-state actors in the negotiation of the Sustainable Development Goals, while at the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Her career has also included NAFTA negotiations at the Commission for Environmental Cooperation, and she was a policy analyst for the Wallace Institute for Alternative Agriculture. Dr. Carpentier is also a 2006 Yale World Fellow, and I'm told that you are also an athlete, that you compete in ultramarathon, Ironman, and that you're a second Dan black belt. You can tell. So, being a second Dan black belt, which I don't know what it is, but I will be very careful in the questions I ask you. So, go ahead.
Merci Emmanuel. Bonjour tout le monde. C'est un plaisir d'être ici avec vous. Thank you for the Alliance of Civilization for organizing this. It's a pleasure for me to welcome you into your house, the United Nations, where we, the people, work. We could not have you at a better time of the United Nations. As you know, multilateralism is under attack, and the more you are here in your house and in this house to support multilateralism, the better the future for the youth in this room will be, because we can see that trade and globalization are under attack. The multilateralism system is under attack. We're playing a game of us versus them, zero-sum game, and that never ends well. So, but what I want to do to start with is to tell you a little bit why I'm here, because you may want to ask, because I did ask myself, why is UNCTAD here in this panel on education? First, because UNCTAD was created in 1964 when a lot of countries were decolonizing, and basically to help developing countries join an economic and financial system in a fairer term, which they were implying that they were not fair at that time, and we're still working on making them fair. And we are the focal point within the UN system on trade, development, and investment, as well as technology and entrepreneurship. And this is where technology comes in, because the way we're doing education right now, and UNCTAD, along with UNESCO, UNICEF, and ILO, the International Labour Organization, I've been asked by the Secretary General of the United Nations to look at the future of work and the future of education. And basically what we're finding is, first, as you all know, between digitalization and connectivity, every aspect of our life, of production and consumption, is changing. And what is impressive is, one thing that is not really changing is education. Pretty much we've not changed our model of education for pretty much 100 years. Some places it's changing slowly, and then there are some experiment being done where we literally say, well, we can get rid of the teachers. And that didn't seem to work either. So it seems like there's a new role for teachers, which will be facilitators of using the technology, but getting rid of the teachers altogether doesn't seem to work. So don't go that route. But it is important to think about these questions and ask these very important scenarios of how do we educate people now so you're prepared for the job market is waiting for you, which we don't even know what it's going to be, by the way. So, right? And none of us know. And so, but how do we make sure that you're prepared in that not knowing scenario? And there's a few things. One of the things that we know is robots typically are not very good at cooperation, creativity, communication, and empathy. So clearly, if we train people and do it with these skills, they should be ahead of the robots and be able to use the robot as opposed to being replaced by the robot, right? So see, these are the things that we're looking into. And how do we do that? And so the typical school that we have will probably not work to do that, because we're gonna have to have, and this is actually in goal for education, lifelong learning. You're probably gonna have, I recycle myself 3 times in my career. You probably will recycle yourself 5, 6, 7, 8, God knows how many times. And that means the lifelong learning is gonna be extremely important. How do we make sure this capacity is at the end of the children, and then the young adult, and then the older adult, and the middle-aged people, so that you don't become left behind, right? So these are all extremely important questions at a time when we're actually seeing a stagnation in the decrease of number of youth that are not in school. So we're no longer making progress on getting kids in school. And even as important, we're not seeing good result on math skills and scientific skills, which, by the way, are extremely needed in the digitalized economy and connectivity economy. So we need to address this as well. And of course, the United Nations, as well as all the organizations around this table, have a role to play. But also, it's not just going to be the international organization. People at the grassroots level and in communities will also be very important. The outfit like yours, to keep that exchange and learning will be very important. Because the technology is changing so fast, that we won't be able to keep up by just going back to school. It's going to have to be done as we go forward. And one of the things that we do at UNCTAD is to provide entrepreneurship for sustainable development. So we, at the request of country, we come in and create entrepreneurship centers where we have master trainers to then train the local trainers that can then train these entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurship is going to be another very important activity that when there's millions of jobs, hundreds of millions of jobs that needs to be created just in Africa. And also because robots are going to be a hard place to see, look at the market, see an opportunity, develop a business model to attack that market. So entrepreneurship is something that's here to stay. And also, when you're an entrepreneur, you keep creating and innovating and seeing new opportunity that you take advantage of. Now, that brings, and we basically did with the Commonwealth, so we come in also at the request of developing countries and help them do a entrepreneurship policy framework. So bring all the line ministries together to see what they need to do to support entrepreneurship and in terms of policy. Because a lot of time what government would do is they'll be, oh, we need to have financing for entrepreneur, which is great, it's needed. But you don't just need the financing. If you just do financing, but you don't provide the networking or I'm having a blank now. The collateral that you'll need in terms of, then you're not going to be able to have a good environment for entrepreneurship in your country. So you need to address pretty much the 6 box of what is needed for a good entrepreneurship ecosystem for this to work. So that's one thing. But youth have different problem in terms than the established entrepreneurs. One of them is network. The youth do not have the same network as the established entrepreneur. And second, they all don't have the collateral. So with the Commonwealth, we created a youth policy framework. So if you want to actually help the youth in your country to be entrepreneurial, how do you do this? So that's another area. Now, however, what we're concerned about is as we go forward and we talk about digital economy and we talk about accessibility requires electricity. Because the internet, you need to be plugged. And we know there's 1.3 billion people don't have access to modern electricity. So we need to solve that problem if we want these children not to be left behind as we put computers in our schools. And so we can't just address education or entrepreneurship. We actually need to make sure that people have access to infrastructure, broadband, electricity, and we need to have concerted effort, and that means we need solidarity. We can't say this is the problem of developing countries. And it brings me back to what I started with, which is the pushback against multilateralism, trade, and globalization. For those of us and you that have studied the problem that we're facing right now of populism and isolationism and nativism, a lot of it is based on people in developed countries that have been left behind. They're basically the one that feel that their government has ignored them completely and vote for total change at any cost. And we cannot afford to have full generation of youth that feel they have no alternative because we don't educate them. We don't educate them in the field of the future where there will be growth. Otherwise, we will continue to have the push against multilateralism, against trade, and against globalization. Why do at UNCTAD we feel that trade is important? There's about 4 nations that develop without trade on this planet. And by the way, talk about civilization, our civilization have been trading, maybe not cross borders, but we've been trading since the beginning of our civilization. This is the way our civilization have developed. This is the way we've developed relationship with other culture, other nation. Sometimes it's been done a little violently, but that's why we need multilateral laws and trading laws and system to set the rule to protect the small countries so they can actually develop. But that's not going to be possible unless our youth feel that they have an opportunity and they're not cornered against the wall. So what is it that we can do? Well, we can all work together to support our youth who can have 2 opportunities right now. And I want to conclude with my 2 opportunities for the youth in this room because I'm putting a lot of hope in you. So, but I'll be here to help among a lot of people. The first opportunities is because of this pushback against trade and globalization and the investment regime, we're going to be renegotiating them. And we all know that the trade regime and the investment regime we have now have not delivered for everybody. It had delivered for the people that were able to take advantage of it, but we've left a lot of people behind. Let's reform the trade system and the investment regime so that it actually delivers for everybody, that it is inclusive. And how are we going to do that? We can't have these trade agreements and the reform of the WTO be done without youth at the table. So far, right now, these negotiations are negotiated with only the multinational at the table. There's no reason for that. And you can actually make your voice heard and insist to be at the table because this is your future. And this is something that we all working on, and we need the youth at the table to ensure that you ask your government to be at the table. The second one is the reform of the UN and the upcoming high-level political forum of the first cycle, the review of the first cycle of the high-level political forum and how much progress we've made on the SDGs. So there's going to be at the level of the heads of state next year. And that means that every single heads of state on this planet, all your government will be briefed. Your president and prime ministers will be briefed on how much progress we've made on these SDGs. This is a mighty good opportunity to make sure they understand that where the gaps are and where you can make a difference if they know what you need to help them get there. And we need more of your voice. During the negotiation of the SDGs following Rio +20, we had serious engagement, not only of children and youth, but of the NGOs and of local authorities, which seem to be going down, and we need to bring back this level of crowdsourcing and participation to make sure that this is your house and it delivers for you. Thank you.
Chantal Carpentier, thank you so much for these inspiring remarks. And I note both the emphasis on trade as a way of linking peoples and nations together, but also the important role that youth has to play in trade negotiations. That's really fundamental. I'd now like to ask José Ángel Calle Suárez to take the floor. José Suárez is the director of the Agencia Extremeña de Cooperación Internacional para el Desarrollo, which means the Extremadura Agency for International Development Cooperation, a close partner of the UN Alliance of Civilizations as well. Mr. Suárez has developed his professional experience as a specialist in refugee and asylum policies in Spain through the Spanish Commission for Refugee Aid, and later he has worked as an expatriate worker in Nicaragua, Honduras, Peru, Chile, Bolivia, Namibia, etc. He has a diploma in social work with specialty in marginalization and social exclusion from the Pablo de Olavide University in Seville. Mr. Suárez, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. You have a great Spanish.
Only the accent.
Thank you very much. You have a great Spanish.
Okay, now we have a problem because I'm going to speak in Spanish, okay?
Spanish, so I hope
Buenos días a
we won't
todas
have
y a
a
todos.
problem.
Es un placer poder estar
Good
aquí
day
con
to everybody.
vosotras
It's
y
a
con
pleasure
vosotros.
to have everybody here.
Veréis, como bien
And
decía
as you
el amigo
see,
Manuel,
as Manuel,
yo
my
pertenezco
friend,
al gobierno
has
de la
said,
Junta de
I
Extremadura.
do belong
Extremadura
to
es una
the
región
Extremadura
de las 17
government,
que
local
conforman el
government,
Estado
which
de
is a
España.
region
Si podemos pasar,
in
can we
Spain,
pass to the
very
next?
peculiar region. Can we please
The
pass
next?
the next slide?
Okay, here you are.
Here
We are
we
just in this part, estamos en esa parte,
we
justo
are
en la
over here,
frontera,
right
frontera
here
con
on the
nuestros
border
amigos y hermanos
with our
portugueses,
friends, with our
con los que además
brothers
trabajamos mucho de
and
manera
friends from
conjunta
Portugal,
líneas de educación para la
with whom we
ciudadanía
always
global.
work together towards
Yo soy el
global
director de la
citizenship.
Agencia de Cooperación de este gobierno.
am the director
Sabéis que la distribución
of
de
the
España...
International Corporation
Yeah.
of Extremadura.
What? Ok. Como sabéis, la distribución en este caso de España hace que haya 17 regiones con capacidad administrativa y pública de hacer su propia política de cooperación internacional para el desarrollo. Para eso, mi gobierno tiene este instrumento, esta Agencia Pública de Cooperación Internacional, con 4 grandes responsabilidades: cooperación internacional para el desarrollo, acción humanitaria de emergencia, construcción de paz y educación para la ciudadanía global. Por eso estamos aquí. Veréis, antes mi amigo Manuel me presentaba diciendo que yo había sido expatriado en muchos países. En uno de los países donde fui expatriado, me hice una promesa a mí mismo, y era en cada vez que tuviera oportunidad de estar en un espacio público y más como este, en Naciones Unidas, recordaría a una mujer indígena, una mujer feminista, una mujer ecologista, que fue asesinada por defender su pueblo, por defender su tierra y sus recursos. Ella era Berta Cáceres, hondureña, de la que yo pude aprender mucho y la que hoy aquí me permito estos segundos para reivindicar la búsqueda de la justicia que todavía ella no ha podido tener. Y ella decía algo que para mí es importante y que explica el sentido de la educación para la ciudadanía que desde el gobierno de mi región, Extremadura, en España, tenemos. Veréis, ella decía que una selva sin la otra no tiene sentido. Así analizamos nosotros la educación para la ciudadanía. Un gueto con derechos, un gueto con un sistema público de redistribución de riquezas, un gueto geográfico con un instrumento tan válido como el estado de bienestar, rodeado de un montón de geografía y de muchos pueblos del mundo donde esas oportunidades no existan, no tiene sentido. Desde mi gobierno tenemos una concepción internacionalista de los derechos y así fundamentamos nuestras líneas de educación para la ciudadanía global. Para ser capaces de generar competencias en la gente joven, dentro de nuestro territorio y fuera de nuestro territorio. Por eso somos uno de los financiadores de Alianza para la Civilización, de Alianza de Civilizaciones. Y cuando yo explicaba dónde estaba mi región, os puedo contar que es una de las regiones más despobladas de toda Europa. Pero sin embargo es una de las regiones españolas de más extensión, que tiene el 30% del agua dulce de todo mi estado, de toda España, que tiene una emisión negativa de CO2, que produce el 436% de su energía y que prácticamente toda la energía que nuestro pueblo, el pueblo extremeño, consume es de origen renovable, que estamos produciendo y construyendo las mayores plantas termosolares de producción de energía de toda Europa. Primera, segunda y tercera planta más grande de Europa en construcción. Que estamos diseñando un modelo de desarrollo hacia el mundo que sea un modelo de desarrollo humano y sostenible. Para eso también estamos preparando y formando a nuestra ciudadanía para la capacidad de que entienda la dimensión del rol de nuestra región en el mundo. Porque es probablemente la región más empobrecida de España, tiene esta presencia fuerte hoy en las Naciones Unidas. Probablemente porque tenemos una concepción de ser una ciudadanía global. Veréis, en los años 60 y los 70, mi región perdió el 50% de su población por tener que buscar 50% de su población, un verdadero éxodo, una verdadera diáspora. Por tener que buscar oportunidades de futuro en otra región, nos convertimos en la región proporcionalmente con mayor migración de todo el país. Hoy esa población está distribuida por toda Europa y fundamentalmente también por toda España. Tú vas al sur de Madrid y escuchas hablando en español, pero con acento extremeño. También en el País Vasco, también en el sur de París, también en Berlín, también en algunos barrios de Lisboa.
In
Los
some
hermanos
neighborhoods
portugueses
of
siempre nos
Lisbon.
acogieron bien.
We can find that too,
Hoy
and that's why we're so well
entendemos
recognized
que
by
como
our
ciudadanos
Portuguese
globales
brothers. We
tenemos
do
que
understand as
permitir y
global
entender
citizens, we do
las
have to
dimensiones y los grandes
understand the
desafíos
dimensions,
que hoy
distinguished
ocurren en el mundo
dimensions
de una manera
of
global. Y
challenges
hablaba
that
mi
takes place
compañera
in the
Chantal
world, and
de
as
una serie de
my
dimensiones que ocurren en el
friend
mundo
Chantal over here has been saying,
que valoramos con mucha
in
preocupación.
this region of the world,
Hoy
that we
hoy
value so
realmente
well.
hoy
So nowadays,
existe una agenda
we
global
actually
del odio.
have this
Hoy
hate
existe realmente
global
una
agenda
agenda
of
de
hatred,
antiderechos
of
bien
anti-rights
articulada.
that is very
Muy
well
bien
articulated.
articulada. ¿Quién iba a decir que Europa,
And who's going to say that Europe
habiéndose cumplido
has
qué aniversario
accomplished,
hace poco,
has completed
estaría mirando con
an
tanta preocupación
anniversary,
como
I
estamos
think,
mirando el
not too long
ascenso de
ago,
grupos
and
de
I would say
ultraderecha
this
a muchos de nuestros
concern that we
gobiernos?
carry now of far
¿Quién
extremist
nos hubiera dicho hace 10 años
right-wing within our
que tantos
governments
grupos de extrema
been
derecha estarían accediendo a tantos
growing
gobiernos del mundo? No hay que mirar
along
muy lejos estando
the
donde estamos.
special years? We don't need to
Por lo
look
tanto,
very
miramos
far
con
away
mucha
to see where we're
preocupación
going to end up
esa agenda
if
global del
we
odio.
let
Y por lo
that
tanto
take over.
proponemos y trabajamos
This general
una agenda que no vaya al
agenda
rebufo, que
of
no vaya
hatred
detrás, sino que sea
that
capaz de
has
construir
no
narrativas
consideration
favorables,
for ourselves.
que sea
We
capaz
need
de
to
construir
fight that
narrativas
back with
positivas
favorable
y
and positive
propositivas
narratives
en alianzas
that
con otros países del mundo.
that are
Para
actually
eso quiero
proposing
poner uno de los
something
ejemplos que
related to
construimos
the
con nuestros
alliances
hermanos,
that we
nuestros
need
amigos
to
y nuestros
forge
vecinos
around the
portugueses.
globe,
Mi gobierno,
such
el
as
gobierno de
the
la Junta
ones
de
we
Extremadura,
have forged with
ha
our neighbors in
desarrollado un
Portugal.
convenio con
My
la
friends
República
in
Portuguesa para
Extremadura
poder trabajar la
has this
educación para la
covenant with the
ciudadanía de
Portuguese
manera bilateral.
government so we can work education for global citizenship in a bilateral way, but not in a government level, in a citizenship level, immediately. So our organizations of corporations can work better through their frontiers, organizing
Veréis, me gustaría
their
poner más ejemplos
distribution
para
of
que dimensionéis
activities
cómo estamos intentando
among
construir
territories
esta agenda
and
que no sea alternativa, sino que pueda coger la delantera
partner
de
countries.
esa agenda
And
global
if
del
this
odio. Hemos generado
agenda, this new agenda can move forward to fight back the hatred
un programa para los
agenda.
jóvenes de nuestra región,
We have, for instance, this program
vinculando
in
la
our
sociedad civil
region
organizada
that would
con los jóvenes de
engage
nuestra región.
the
Hemos generado un
youth
programa que se
civil
llama
society,
Programa
and we-
Berta Cáceres
it's
para
called
jóvenes
Berta
cooperantes de
Cáceres
Extremadura,
for
construyendo también liderazgos femeninos
our youth
y
in
liderazgos
Extremadura, also
feministas
searching
que
for
fueran
our
capaces de,
leadership
por un lado,
within
fortalecer las
the
organizaciones
women
de nuestra sociedad civil,
and
que están
also
trabajando en más de
organizing
26 países,
our
y por otro
civil
lado, generar una
society
primera
working
experiencia
throughout
en eso que
many
entendíamos que tiene que ser
countries
la
and
dimensión de la
consolidating
cooperación,
experience
la dimensión de la educación para la ciudadanía,
so we can transfer that
desde
to
lo
the education
conceptual
setting,
hacia lo
conceptually,
socioemocional, hacia la
social,
capacidad de generar buenas
emotionally,
herramientas conductuales.
generate
Con estas becas estamos permitiendo
good
que los jóvenes de
conduct
nuestro territorio
tools
se integren
so our
en los más de
territories
26
can
países
integrate
donde
themselves
nuestras ONGs trabajan,
among our
fortaleciendo la
26 countries
capacidad
and
de
to
nuestras
strengthen
ONGs, dando una primera
our
experiencia a
relations
nuestros
and
jóvenes
also
que
to
recién
allow
están
that
salidos de la
experience to
universidad
our youth that
para que
have
puedan
just
poner en valor
exited
la realidad de otros
their
países y para
university
que entiendan la
degrees so they
dimensión
can
global
provide
del mundo.
with a better reality to their
Estamos generando
own
también otra
countries
serie de programas
with a better
que
vision of
promueven el
world.
voluntariado
And we
internacional.
also promoting the
Que mientras viajar
international
sigue siendo un
volunteering
privilegio,
and considering that
mientras
traveling is a privilege
la movilidad humana sigue siendo un
and
privilegio,
also human
va a ser muy
mobility is such a
difícil llegar
privilege,
a los objetivos de la educación para la ciudadanía. El mejor método de educación para la ciudadanía probablemente, la mejor escuela para la educación para la ciudadanía probablemente sea viajar. Estamos fomentando y apoyando el voluntariado internacional, siendo capaces de exportar el mayor de los esfuerzos de nuestra ciudadanía joven en diferentes países del mundo. Y veréis, hay algo que también nos preocupa mucho en estos términos. Cuando hablamos de migraciones, hemos convertido el mar Mediterráneo, y fijaos, esa es Extremadura, una región que se construye desde el Imperio Romano, las culturas árabes, las culturas del norte de Europa, una tierra verdaderamente de mestizaje, que es lo que realmente siempre ha representado el mar Mediterráneo. Hoy el mar Mediterráneo, amigos y amigas, es una fosa común. Es una verdadera tumba. Es una fosa común a la que los países europeos no están siendo capaces de dar respuesta. Nosotros estamos intentando trabajar algo que también creemos que es muy importante con el mundo de la comunicación, con los periodistas. Hace unos meses terminamos el primer Congreso Internacional sobre Periodismo y Migraciones. ¿Cómo somos capaces de construir nuevas narrativas sobre migraciones desde el punto de vista periodístico? Es fundamental. Cada vez que escuchamos migraciones en la prensa, hablamos de avalanchas, de olas, de máximas tragedias. Nunca somos capaces de construir las migraciones de una manera conceptual como verdaderamente lo que son, un elemento enriquecedor, un elemento que genera diversidad, un elemento que ha construido regiones como la nuestra, como la mía, y que ha construido unas civilizaciones mediterráneas absolutamente diversas, donde la convivencia siempre ha sido un éxito, como anunciaba ahora mismo el exministro Moratino, próximo alto representante de Alianza de Civilizaciones a partir de enero, hablando de su Córdoba natal. Esa Córdoba, la alianza de las tres culturas mediterráneas. Verá, yo podría hablar mucho tiempo, pero sé que ya me he pasado de los 5 minutos. Y es lo que nos hablaba. Yo lo que quiero apelar en la creación de alternativas que podemos poner encima de la mesa, fundamentalmente son esas. Las administraciones tienen que trabajar de la mano de la sociedad civil, si no esto no va a ser exitoso. Tenemos que ser capaces de construir la educación para la ciudadanía. Si pueden, por favor, denme. Y esa es la dimensión bajo la que nosotros la construimos, desde el feminismo, desde la búsqueda de la sostenibilidad de la vida, desde la concepción favorable de las migraciones y de la movilidad humana. Para nosotros, esas son las tres hechos nucleares que fundamentan nuestra educación para la ciudadanía: el feminismo, la sostenibilidad y la movilidad humana. Administraciones y sociedad civil unidas, puntos de unión como esos tres, y fundamentalmente algo que creo que es muy importante, el que me hablaron las compañeras. Existe un nuevo contrato social global. Esos son los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Es el lenguaje común que podemos utilizar. Por eso yo también quería hablar español, también porque el inglés me iba a costar un poco. Pero por eso yo también quería hablar español. Es necesario que en esta diversidad de lenguajes que tenemos, utilicemos ese contrato social global que nos unifica como diferentes pueblos del mundo. Esos son los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Esa es la mejor herramienta para la construcción de educación para la ciudadanía que podemos tener hoy en día entre nuestros pueblos, entre nuestras administraciones, y lo que los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible arrancan. No dejemos a nadie atrás.
We cannot leave nobody behind, and I just think education towards global citizenship, it is the one opportunity that provides equitable opportunities without leaving anyone behind. Thank you so much again.
Gracias. Thank you so much, José, for these inspiring words. And it's really interesting to see how the people of a region in a country have taken on their responsibility as well. internationally. I think that's really a truly inspiring example. Before passing on the floor to Kate, I would like to introduce the High Representative of the Alliance of Civilizations, His Excellency Nassir Abdulaziz Al Nassir, who will say a few words and has just joined us. Thank you.
First of all, I want to be with you to welcome all of you and to thank you for your participation. It's very important for us to have this breakout session. This will enrich your recommendation, and your input will reach the outcome document after we finish from today's meeting. So I thought I'll come and greet you and welcome you, and also I look forward for the outcome and recommendation and new ideas that will help us. But as you know, the theme for this breakout session is global citizenship education. Education is a very important pillar for the Alliance. It's out of 4 pillars that we are focused to implement the mission of the Alliance, beside youth, beside media and migration. And you know, our mission, it's the Alliance, it's a soft power tool, it's a political soft power tool to prevent conflicts and diffuse tensions coming from religions and culture. That's why education is one of the top priority on our agenda. And I just would like to mention 2 things here to add to the discussion. As a global citizenship, identify with being a part of an interdependent world community where cultural and ethnic differences are celebrated as a strength rather than weakness. Number 2 involves teaching respect and appreciation for cultural diversity and a commitment to promoting and protecting human rights locally and globally. So I thought I would share this with you, and I will encourage you. I listen to one of the speakers. It's very interesting. And I am sorry, I wish I can spend more time with you to listen to all of you, but I have other, many meetings that I have to be on the same time. So once again, thank you so much, and good luck, and we really appreciate all of you to be with us and to help us and to contribute to the new ideas that we are looking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. So I'd like to introduce Kate Kumbo. Kate is the director of a really innovative foundation, the Peace Jam Foundation, an international education organization that connects young people and educators with Nobel Prize laureates, Nobel Peace Prize laureates, and whose mission is to create the next generation of young leaders committed to positive change in the world, in their communities, and themselves. Dr. Kumbo researches, writes, and designs Peace Jam's award-winning curricula for young people aged 5 to 25. And she works directly with 13 Nobel Peace Prize winners to host youth leadership conferences for youth around the world, and manages a nationwide and international network of Peace Jam chapters. Dr. Kumbo has a PhD in educational psychology from the University of Colorado Boulder, and was previously the director of service learning for the Colorado Department of Education in the early 2000s. Dr. Kumbo, you have the floor.
All right, wonderful. Hi, everybody. I'm going to, because I work for a youth organization, we don't ever sit down. So I'm going to ask you all to stand up. And what I'd like you to do is actually turn to the person next to you, that you may be the person you met earlier, but maybe it's a different person. And what I'd like you to do is, the person who is taller will make a fist, okay? The person who is shorter will open the fist. On your mark, get set, go. So here, you're tall, so make a fist. I'll make a fist. You can
Strong as possible. Are you opening your hand?
try and open it.
No, I have to open it.
Okay, all right.
But the problem is, I'm cheating because I know exactly what's going to happen. So I can't.
All right. All right, you can stop. All right, no hurting each other. All right. How many of you consider yourselves peaceful people? Raise your hand. If you think of yourself someone who's working for peace, here you are at the UN. How many of you forced your partner's hand open? Raise your hand. Honestly. Okay? So, wow, right? So this is how ingrained this idea of force and violence is in our culture, in ourselves. We're all from all over the world, right? And yet we all want to the same thing. If I want to get what I want, I'm going to have to take it, or I'm going to have to force it, right? Those of you who are parents, how many of you slip into that role after about 5 minutes of your good parenting techniques? You're like, just because I said so, right? How many times in our own lives, how many times are countries, right, using force to get what they want, right? Each of us is doing it in our own lives, and we say, oh, no, we're the peaceful people, we're over here, right? No. We're all perpetuating this. We're all the role models for this. What does it look like when we step back and analyze our own approaches to how this world works and what we are contributing to it, right? So, okay, you can sit down. So there are many young people in this room right now. If you are under 30 or under, please stand up. Yeah. Okay, if you're young at heart and feel like you're under 30, go ahead and stand up. All right. So I just want to acknowledge the young people who really are the ones who have inherited this crap mess that we've created, right? So there's no other way to say it. We can use a lot of fancy statistics and everything else, but it's not looking so good right now, is it? And the amount of anxiety, right, that our young people are experiencing is because of our entrenchment in our intractability, in our seeing others. How many of you in this room acknowledge it, think you're on the right side, right? There you go. So we're just entrenched. What if we weren't on any side? Right? How do we create a new generation of young leaders who understand that it's going to take a whole different way of thinking for us to solve the problems that we've created, right? So that's what we do at Peace Jam. So we are basically 14 Nobel Peace Prize winners, including Tandi's father, Desmond Tutu, the Dalai Lama, Rigoberta Menchú from Guatemala, Betty Williams and Mairead Corrigan Maguire from Northern Ireland, Jody Williams from the International Campaign to Ban Landmines, Oscar Arias, former president of Costa Rica. These are just a few of them. We have Jose Ramos Horta from East Timor. And these role models are mentoring our youth to change the world, right? Each of us also has that ability, right? Regardless of your age. So basically what we do is we bring these Nobel Peace Prize winners together with young people, right, so that they can have role models who are actually worth looking up to, right? So that's really lacking today as well. So I want you to think about the last time you were inspired, in the last 3 weeks. Just think about it for a minute. When was the last time you were inspired? And who inspired you? Raise your hand. Who inspired you?
That's amazing woman that we have over here that was speaking yesterday.
Nicole. I'm going to put Nicole on the spot. Yeah. Yeah. Right? Why did she inspire you?
It was so amazing to see a young person. And I'm from Brazil, so we have many challenges, mainly with women and black women. And when I see a black woman standing and enhancing their voice and saying amazing things and showcasing her amazing project, it really inspires me and I can understand the job I have working through empowerment education that I do in my communities to the girls that I am working with. Come here, and in the next year, these girls can be in my place here doing what she did.
Right. All right, Nicole. Thank you. So I think it comes back to the goal 16, which is the peaceful and inclusive society, right? So what does that really look like? I mean, we throw around a lot of words, right? We're really good at that, especially those of us with PhDs. Like, oh, we love words and hear ourselves talk about it, you know? So really, that's a lot of work, right? A peaceful and inclusive society is a lot of work. And there's a lot of skills that need to go into that, right? Violence is actually an easier alternative than peace, right? So it's easy, in the United States, we have a very big issue with gun violence, right? So it's easier to shoot somebody than to negotiate and find common ground. And that's the message we send to our young people, right? We have a military capability that far exceeds all the other countries combined, but yet we invest 50% of our budget in this country, the United States, to more military, right? That's absurd. It is so beyond absurd that you wonder, what world are we living in? Right? And this is what when you work with young people, those of you who know, they look at you like, what the heck are you adults thinking? And the fact that you would be so fearful that you'd be promoting the, more arms being bought, and these Central American countries buying military apparatus for what? They're, a small country who have allies. They're not going to be able to defend themselves against a big superpower anyway. So Oscar Arias from Costa Rica really works around the world to help these countries figure out how to have true human security, right? True human security is when your people are fed, they have jobs, they have universal health care, and a sustainable economic and environment, right? Economic sustainability as well as environmental sustainability. So that's a different mindset for many of us. So that's a little bit about what Peace Jam philosophy is. But this whole idea, basically for over the last 22 years with our 14 Nobel Peace Laureates, we have involved 1.25 million young people in this work, right, of creating a better world for themselves and the community. We have done this in 41 countries that we know of, because people can do the program, download, and we don't know that they're doing it, so it's hard, but that's part of the message. We have hosted probably over, 300 youth conferences around the world. The first international conference we did was with Desmond Tutu on Robben Island, in the prison where Nelson Mandela was kept for 26 years. So it was very powerful, and this conference was half black children from the townships and half white children, and they came into the conference like this on separate sides of the room, and after 2 days and the magic of Desmond Tutu, they were embracing each other and are to this day still working on issues together in their communities. So this is what we do. It's bringing these young people together face to face. Yes, social media is absolutely critical, but we're human beings, right? We need that face-to-face interaction. We need a touch. We need a hug, right? You need to be able to look somebody in the eye and have a conversation with them that's not mediated by electronics. And so that's the one thing that we do a lot with social media. We do a lot with films and video and things like that, but we also try to keep that face-to-face interaction with our young people. So like Jose's video of his conference, ours are similar. And you'll see one in here in a minute. But we also do year-round programming, and I think that that's what's important about this work is that we have a curriculum starting in primary school, all the way up through university, and it centers on the life and the work of these 14 Nobel Peace Prize winners. So what were they doing? So if you're little, right, and you're maybe 7, you're learning about what these laureates did when they were kids. So Desmond Tutu was growing up. He was in the hospital for 2 years with polio, TB. And can you imagine spending 2 years of your life in a hospital? But what was that like for him? And what kinds of things did he experience? What was, like the Dalai Lama? He grew up at Tibet. That was 14,000 feet high, right? So I live in Colorado. We hike those 14ers, and it's a long way up, and there's not much air up there. They had animals like yaks, right? And they ate, you know, goat yak milk. And so it's very interesting. It's this cultural experience for these young people that they can travel around the world and truly be global citizens without ever leaving their community, right? And as they get a little older, they begin to get into the historical and geopolitical context of all of these conflicts that these Nobel Peace Laureates addressed. So when you learn about apartheid in South Africa and you meet Desmond Tutu or get to hear about him, and then you get to meet or hear about Jody Williams and the international campaign to ban landmines and how that was an international effort. And then you learn about Betty Williams, who helped to end the Troubles in Northern Ireland. 500 years, everyone said, we can't fix this, right? And so these women said, we've had enough. And they basically ended the conflict in Northern Ireland. And so people start to see, oh, look at these interesting patterns, right, between apartheid and the Troubles in Northern Ireland, right, the issues in East Timor, for those of you who know what those are. These are patterns, and they begin to see, oh my goodness, we can learn from our past, right? We can see these issues as interconnected. So that is part of what the curriculum is. We also do a lot of the skill building that is needed for these young people to be global citizens, right? So this is cooperation, responsibility, finding common ground, and the core of all of our curriculum is civil discourse, because if you can't talk to each other, right, nothing's going to happen. So that's sort of what we do in terms of the programming, and it's beautiful. And then in all of our regions that we have affiliate offices, we host a 2-day Peace Jam conference. So these young people get to then meet the person they've been studying and getting to know. So Jody Williams, our laureate, my favorite quote of hers is, emotion without action is irrelevant, right? So we can complain all we want, and that's not going to fix anything. So basically, ours is a service learning curriculum. So basically, these young people all need to go out, do a community needs assessment, figure out what the underlying root causes of the issues in their communities are, and address them, right, period. And when they come to a Peace Jam conference, they present those projects to the Nobel Peace Laureate and the other 300 to 400 or 500 kids in the room. So they're inspiring each other, as well as, you know, being inspired and inspiring the Nobel Peace Prize winner. So these 10 issue areas that Peace Jam has, we call it our Billion Acts of Peace campaign. We have 10 issue areas that align perfectly with the sustainability goals. So it is a beautiful, and we're moving more and more, getting the young people to be able to talk about that and to really contribute to this movement that the UN is doing. So I just want to, for the sake of time, we have a little video, so I want you to be able to watch that. But I think that really, I want all of us to be thinking about what role we're all playing in this, right? So we all have a role to play, and I think a lot of us haven't even realized our full potential yet. I think we all are still sitting, thinking that we want to do something, or still stuck in the patterns. But this is a revolution, and it's not, and an evolution, and it's not going to happen unless each and every one of us in this room and everybody you know steps up in a fresh and brand new way, in a brave way that you have never done before. So you all know what that means for you because you've been thinking about it, right? And it's time for you to step out, right? And to embrace that, we all need to take a leap of faith with absolute courage, right? And we have, look at this beautiful community. So you will not fall, right? Because we're all there to catch you. All right. So just a quick video.
Peace Jam is a year-long program basically an after-school program with teachers and mentors. They do service projects, and they learn about the Nobel Peace Prize winners who travel around the world and inspire them to make their communities better.
The curriculum is really unique in the sense that it centers on the life and the work of these Nobel Peace Prize winners. You think about the Dalai Lama, what was he doing as a little boy, and how did that impact who they became? How do you transform the troubles in your life into a purpose?
In every region and every year, we have the Peace Jam Conference, where a Nobel Peace Laureate comes to the conference, where they actually get to meet the students in person. It's an amazing transformative experience for these youth.
Peace Jam, South Africa.
Who got the power? We got the power. Who got the power? We got the power.
There has been incredible progress in South Africa, and the optimism you feel in the country is palpable. We're going to be there with Lema Bowie. She's one of the most powerful speakers and people that I know. She won the Nobel Peace Prize for helping end the civil war in Liberia by bringing together Muslim and Christian women. She knows how to bring you up and make you feel like you can change the world.
Young people, each of you carries some passion, something that you want to do. When I was a little girl, I used to dream. And then my dream changed because of the war. I was dreaming about becoming a pediatrician and that I would treat children. When my dream changed, I kept asking myself, in all of those war years, what else do I have that I can contribute to the world? Do you have a talent? Do you have your voice? Are you like me, nosy, that you can jump into other people's business and try to bring common sense to a situation? We all have special and unique gifts. How do we use them to build our community?
You'll notice I was wearing the same shirt. I guess I like this shirt. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is really inspiring. Our last speaker is Massimiliano Montanari, Executive Director of Save the Dream. Massimiliano was formerly at the United Nations. His experience is in international policies, diplomacy, social innovation, and design of multi-sectoral programs. He also serves as Chief of Cabinet of the President of the International Center for Sports Security, and he has undertaken the creation of initiatives to empower youth and civil society through the use of sports and sports values, including and particularly Save the Dream. Before joining ICSS and Save the Dream, Massimiliano held a number of positions at the United Nations. He worked as the head of the International Center for Public-Private Security Policies based in Lisbon. Massimiliano, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I could have said better, so thank you so much. Yes, I mean, now I'm here representing Save the Dream. Save the Dream is it's an international NGO based in Doha, in Qatar. It has been established now almost 7 years ago, with the aim of promoting a safe access to sport, to youth, to sport and to all its social and educational values. And most importantly, Save the Dream has developed as a movement, as a global movement of people, including athletes and organizations who believes in the power of sport and in the power of the values of sport to build more inclusive and more fair societies. Before starting, let's say, sharing my reflections, and I also have a short video that will explain a little bit on how our cooperation started with the UN Alliance of Civilizations, I would like to share an idea or to propose a kind of petition. You know, I was a bit surprised a few minutes ago when I heard the term expatriate. I think that the concept, the term expatriate and the term of a global citizen are not compatible.
So I would like to propose to initiate a petition together, to ban, the use of the term expatriates, at the international level, at the national level, because I work, half of my life outside, the country where I was born. I have daughters that one was born in a country, another one was born in another one. They eat Italian food, Senegalese food, now Qatari karak, drinking Qatari karak. So one of them was born in Paris, another one grew up in Lisbon, So really the concept of patria, the concept of Heimat, the concept of a nation is totally different and absolutely has to be expanded, if we are really serious in talking about global citizens. So I think that the UN Alliance for Civilizations could be the right environment maybe to start, this type of petition or campaign and to really ban this term, which I consider it as offensive for people that are open in their mind and open in their heart, towards diversity. So, but I'm here to speak about sport, and not to initiate other actions. But before going into that, if you can show the short video about our collaboration with the UN AOC, it started 2 years ago in Baku. So this gives you a little bit of flavors of the roots of our work with them.
Sport can be a diversion. Sport can be a hobby. And for a fortunate few, sport can change the world. These are not my words, these are sensible words of an exceptional man, one who loved sport and knew the force it has to transform society. Nelson Mandela.
With Save the Dream, we have tried to implement projects to build more inclusive and more fair societies.
The Alliance of Civilization speaks of the role of sport. It has much to do with the issue of values. It has to do with the types of values that one can develop by pursuing sports.
This breakout session is a first joint activity of Save the Dream, whom activities you've seen, with the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations under the Memorandum of Understanding.
مسار الرياضة الذي اتبعته من قبل في حياتي هي كان له أثرا كبيرا لأن من تعرف علي في هذه الحادثة كانوا رياضيين ونشروا
Football, which is a very peaceful game that brings people together, that show a different message to the whole world, a message that is not about death or despair or even destruction. It was a message about hope and celebration of life, and also opportunity to give it to others to dream big and believe that the sky is always the limit and not the walls or the barriers.
El fútbol en sí mismo tiene una cantidad de valores que los jóvenes aprecian.
If I would have a daughter, I will give her a chance to play. And it's her choice to decide whether she should continue playing football on a professional level or amateur or not.
We want to build bridges. We don't want to build walls.
I think the most important to show to the governments the impact of sport on local society. If individual projects and initiatives of individuals, which slowly will grow, and then the government will see the impact, even to the small societies in different areas of the world, I believe they will support the project.
It's true. Sport has the power to change the world. And I think that all the politics should think about their programs in sport and how they can believe in sport values.
Lo que hace el deporte es dar los pilares fundamentales de valores sobre lo que lo demás se puede edificar. En el caso que nosotros experimentamos, eso les dio la capacidad de escucharse, de respetarse, de considerar al otro no un enemigo, sino un socio, porque sin él no podía jugar, y eso cambió la perspectiva.
The dream of a child is the most genuine and pure expression of human ambition.
I think that the relation between sport and higher values, it's historical. At the time of the ancient Greece, in preparation of the Olympic Games, countries, the parties in conflict, they used to suspend conflicts in order to allow athletes to participate in Olympic Games. So the association between the sport and the common good, like peace, like dialogue, is something that has very, let's say, deep roots in the history. And indeed, there have been moments in the history in which sport has spoken more than 1,000 words. Jesse Owens winning medals, in the Olympic Games in Berlin in front of Adolf Hitler, and winning actually thanks to the advice and the help of a German athlete, because Jesse Owens was about to be disqualified. But also in Rome, in the Olympic Games in the 1960, having the two Germanys marching together, or more recently, the two Koreas marching together. So certainly, sport has played and continues to play a very important role in the history of the relation between civilizations and the dialogue between civilizations. Also, the participation of people from many countries all around the world in Olympic Games, in football World Cups, as actually neutral area, as free zones. These also show how actually the relation is strong between the concept of global citizens and the concept of sport and major sporting events. But also you can find millions of people all around the world maybe supporting or cheering for a team from another country. Teams like Barcelona, Real Madrid, like Juventus, they have supporters from all around the world. So these are no more, let's say, teams which are linked to a specific city or to a specific country. The sport can have a very strong influence. The practice of sport can have a very strong influence on the mindset, on the mentality and the education of youth, and can provide, let's say, global citizens with very important tools to achieve their objectives and their goals. It's very difficult, according to me, to separate the concept of global citizenships and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. I think a real global citizen is naturally inspired by the goals and naturally, let's say, voted, to achieve those goals. So, if you learn from sport, you learn on how, let's say, to work and to fight for the values and the objectives that you want to achieve. Because if you are a good sport person, you know that you want to success. Nobody's playing to. Of course, people that they enjoy participating in sport in any case. But when you practice sport, when you play, you want to win. Nobody's going to play a match of any sport with the idea, I'm going to lose, I want to lose, or I will be happy with a 0-0. This doesn't work. So sport actually is preparing us with the right mentality. At the same time, sport is preparing us to fail, because whether you win, whether you learn something new. So, but that's something that is inspiring for youth and is preparing them, is helping them in the course of their life. At the same time, sport is instilling us an important notion regarding the time factor, because you have a certain time, to achieve your goal. So the same thing is with the Sustainable Development Goals. Whether you achieve them within a certain period of time, whether you don't achieve them. Let's think about environmental protection and climate change. Whether we win, whether, I'm sorry to say, but whether we die. Touch wood, whatever you have available, but there is no choice, and there is a limited time. A few days ago, I saw a city, in my country, in Venice, under the water, So it's real. So sport is teaching us, the time factor. And at the same time, as you might also heard in the video, sport is teaching us to respect our opponent. Because in sport, you need an opponent. The opponent is not your enemy. You need him. You need her. Otherwise, you will have to play alone. Okay, like tennis, you can play against the wall, but but the wall will always succeed. So I think sport is a unique school of life to prepare and to educate global citizens. Yesterday, I think it was Danilo Turk, he mentioned that in the field of the promotion of intercultural dialogue, there is still a bit of lack of stories, a lack of narratives. I have to say I partially agree on that statement, because actually in the field of sport we have a lot of stories, a lot of very successful stories at all levels regarding interstate relations, regarding infra-community or inter-community relations. So actually the story and the history is rich, is very full of successful stories of friendship and dialogue through sport. Our organization has tried to put into practice these concepts. Today, during the closing session, the High Representative will launch a new project that we will be implementing together in the next 2 years. So alongside the UN Alliance of Civilization, but also in collaboration with the International Olympic Truth Center and other organizations such as National Olympic Committees, universities like the Sorbonne Universities and many others, we will initiate a project to educate and to train young volunteers to be deployed in international sporting events, but also to be deployed in sport for peace and development projects. So the idea is to develop a common doctrine. Initially, we will focus primarily on the Mediterranean region and the Middle East, and prepare these youth to undertake this task of serving, in major sporting events and sport activities, but at the same time with the long-term vision also to increase the employability of all these youth and to give them opportunity to find then a job or to create jobs in the field of sport. This is a similar experience. We already have it with another project that was founded by the European Union a couple of years ago, that will also lasted 2 years. It was actually a project that utilizes sport to enhance youth mobility in the Mediterranean region. So we educated all these youth from all Mediterranean countries to work and to develop skills to be employed in the sports sector, but at the same time to develop and to acquire some common values in the field of human rights and respect of diversity and promotion of intercultural dialogue. I also would like to mention a last example that I consider a good practice is in the field of global participation for the protection of common goods, which is a project that we have implemented in Brazil during the Football World Cup and during the Olympic Games. That was a project implemented in collaboration with UNICEF and with the Secretary of Human Rights of Brazil. So we have developed an application that was then utilized and hosted by the government of Brazil. The application was created to protect the safety and the security of children during the games. So basically we have engaged global citizens, so people coming from all around the world to attend the matches, but we have also engaged, obviously, the local population and encouraged them to report cases that could jeopardize the security of children during the events. Therefore, cases of labor exploitation, sexual exploitations. So this application and the campaign has been widely promoted thanks to the help of famous athletes, football players like Neymar, Del Piero, but also thanks to the help of the tourism industry. So the taxi drivers have promoted this, the hotel industry, airlines. So this resulted in, we managed to reach more than 200 million people thanks to the campaign. And this has resulted concretely in 5,000 reports that has been sent by people, by citizens, to the law enforcement authorities asking for an intervention for the sake of protecting the life or the innocence of children during the game. So that's, I think, it's also a good example of how, let's say, a global citizen can contribute, to the protection of a common good. In this case, we are talking about the childhood. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank
you. Thank you so much, Massimiliano. So I'd like to now open the floor to questions. And I see already a first hand. So let me just say, could you please limit your intervention to an actual question? I mean, you can have maybe, one-sentence statements to set the scene, but really focus on the question. And then introduce yourself, please, and say where you're from. Please, gentleman on my left.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is So I see, the global citizenship education as a way to naturalize deeply held values about making our world more sustainable, about realizing how our actions, our daily decisions can cause the suffering of some other people. Here in the table, you have talked about ways to engage youth through non-formal education, sports, and other initiatives. But how do you think you can link the experience, the knowledge that you have acquired to formal education? How can we create that link to reach, to amplify the stories that you have and to increase the impact of your experience, your knowledge, and of these concepts?
Thank you. Who wants to take this?
Well, I can take it first. We actually implement our curriculum primarily in the younger grades, integrated into the school day. So that's been an interesting task, knowing that our education system is so outdated in many parts of the world. It's not easy, but I think that there is enough acknowledgement of teaching and learning theory now that and the way that society's set up. So I don't really have any great answers other than the fact that we're all working on it and trying to align with the learning standards, but also pushing the envelope. So when young people, we use something like a service learning methodology, which is actually a teaching and learning method of engaging young people in applying what they're learning to the real world, because that's how they're going to need to learn. And so it's like based on educating our educators and working with our educators around the concept that is it enough for students to know, or should they be able to change the world with what they know? And that second has a lot other different types of pedagogy that are going to be needed if they need to be able to apply everything that they're doing to actually real world situations. So we have some success, but I'd say that our success is more in the primary middle school ages, where it's easier to go in and to actually integrate right into the curriculum. But our high schools are tough in the United States. There's still an industrial model where each class is taught separately for the most part. There are models where this is not happening. Although we give a lot of rhetoric to this engagement and problem-based learning and experiential, we do very little of it still in our classrooms. So I think we're going to need to really overhaul the whole system. And I think that many of us in this room have a role to play in that, because we all have beautiful resources that we can bring, and we know what schools are supposed to look like. And we are seeing it in the elementary and the middle schools when we're able to get in there and actually work with many other partners who do work similar to ours. So it would be like all of us up here working, and there's much more room for that to happen. We find in the younger grades.
Great, thank you, Chantaline and then Jose.
Just quickly, I talked about entrepreneurship. So one of the things we do is in partnership with the private sector. So one is we ask the youth to identify a problem in their own community. Then they come back, and then they're taught how to code to solve that problem. So it's not just solving a problem to solve a problem. It's a problem in your community. Now, what skills do you need? And these are totally transferable to the real world and to job creation. So I think this is the solution. It's going to have to be in partnership with NGOs and people like at this table, as well as the private sector, all the digital companies. But as we both said, we need to reform the education system. The advantage, again, for developing countries is since we still have to build those schools and there's curriculum, let's just leapfrog to the system that we need. But we need to help them with these models.
Hola, José Antonio. ¿Cómo era? Jorge Antonio. Rápido explicándote, como decía Emmanuel en una frase, cómo nosotros estamos hibridando el sistema a estos niveles. Fundamentalmente lo que hemos hecho es recuperar una asignatura en el itinerario académico de nuestra educación universal pública que se llama Educación para la Ciudadanía. Es la mejor herramienta que tenemos para homologar las capacidades de la sociedad extremeña con independencia de cuál sea el nivel económico del que provenga. En mi región la educación es 99,9% pública, gratuita y universal. La garantía de éxito de construcción de ciudadanía en estos términos de lo que estábamos hablando es que esa asignatura constara y sirviera, valiera académicamente lo mismo que matemáticas. would be as worth as mathematics, language education, literature. And for that, we do have to reduce some other courses, by all means, such as religion, let's say.
Thank you very much. Very briefly, just to answer to George. And now I will speak a little bit about the European Union. I'm not here, of course, but just three things, because we heard here that the best way for global citizenship was to traveling. So you speak about formal education, and also you work with formal education, but just give the example, for instance, about the Erasmus program in Europe, what he has done in the past 30 years in terms of the young people that start in one university, goes another year or half a semester, 6 months abroad, and come back. And there are all studies about what it has made, not only in the life changing of the people that were on that program, but as an overall situation all over Europe. And you know that there are also Erasmus Plus, that is also with other countries that are not only the European ones. And I should see that also in the process of the internationalization of the universities themselves. And here I'm speaking, of course, about the higher education. And I think, of course, the formal education, or the traditional one, even if we are going to discuss what that means nowadays with the new technology and so on, of course, must be one of the targets. And in many ways is already leading what even the administrations and at a national or international level is being done. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman at the back.
I have a question directly to Dr. Kumbo about the financing issue of your program. How do you finance the Peace Jam program, and is it free for the students who wanted to participate, or it is a sort of there are some kind of a tuition fee or something like that?
Right. It is not free to participate for many students, except for in our developing countries. We have donors and sponsors who sponsor those young people. So in communities where we have sponsorship, there is no cost. So in Ghana, Liberia, East Timor, but we have to have the sponsorships to be able to deliver that programming. For our schools who have some resources, it's $250 to download the curriculum and do an online training, or attend a face-to-face training, and that allows 1 or 2 adults to implement the program with one group of young people. And then it goes from there. You know, if you want to do school-wide, it's $1,000, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's very underwritten, because that is really not covering the costs at all. And so part of it is an interesting dilemma for us, is we have a beautiful board of 14 Nobel Peace Prize winners, but they don't fundraise. So we are looking at some unique models with entrepreneurships and other kinds of interesting things. But right now, our primary way that we bring in income to support the programming is in each of our affiliate offices. They write a lot of grants, and they do fees for service. So they'll go out and do workshops in schools and do trainings and bring in some resources that way. But I'd tell you that primarily at the headquarters office, it's with wealthy individuals who feel like they want to play a role in creating change. So you saw in the video the points guy, and that's Brian Kelly. For those of you who like to travel, he's has a travel website where he tells people learn how to travel and with their points. And he's a young man, sold his company at 28 years old and made $28 million, and now he's 35, and Peace Jam is just his life, right? So this is, he always says Peace Jam gives so much more to me than I ever give to them, but this is an opportunity for these entrepreneurs, these young people who have this wealth and are trying to make the world a better place with it. So we have, mostly it's donors, but also grants. And we need more fees for service and things like that, too.
The Nobel laureates for their lecture.
Yes.
What kinds of, how much do you usually pay for
So we
them?
pay them a $15,000 honorarium, which is about
$15,000.
which is about half of what they normally would get for a speaking engagement. And remember, each of these Nobel Peace Laureates, the only way they make money for the most part is by speaking publicly, and it's exhausting. So they're on a plane all the time. You all think you travel a lot. Look at a Nobel Peace Prize winner's schedule. And so the only way that they can bring in resources is actually to speak. So often it's like, wow, I have to go out and speak because I have to pay my staff. My payrolls do. And so we honor them. They're coming and we work them hard for 2.5 days and exhaust them and fill them up. And so we want to make sure we pay them something because otherwise they can't keep affording to do it. So, and then we have a lot of our donors who obviously fall in love with them and their foundations and their organizations and want to support them as well.
Okay.
So there's lots of room at the table for lots more people too. So come on and join us.
Thank you very much. Good.
The lady on my left had a question as well.
Everyone, my name is John, and I just have a question to everybody on the panel. You can choose who I will answer. But how do you actually establish some kind of form of global citizen education for young people who are in a state of transition, like migration, refugee situations, and post-conflict situations? And would you consider this as a priority because they're on the tail end of access to information, on access to digital platforms? There's always a language barrier between where they are and the people who are hosting them. So what works, what can't work?
Thank you. Question.
With pleasure. Let me share maybe our experience. Regarding whether, let's say, the educational activities in, let's say, in countries in transition or crisis areas, whether it's a priority or not, I would say for us it is not necessarily the priority because we pay somehow, let's say, equal attention to the different contexts and situations, particularly because it's very difficult to think that we can change the life of people in areas of conflict or post-conflict, if you don't change the mindset of people in countries which are actually making those decisions, which very often they lead, to conflicts and crises. Because sometimes, wars are actually moved not by ignorant people, but are moved by very cultivated people. I mean, usually the masterminds of conflicts and war are people who have studied in the best universities in the world. So they're not ignorant at all. They probably lack of humanitarian education or ethical education, but not of, let's say, training and preparation. However, of course, we are very much committed, to bring sport and with sport educational opportunities in countries which have been affected by conflict. Actually, this year we have been both in Iraq and more recently in Darfur. The way that we operate in this type of context, we work primarily with young multipliers. So we don't work with the children, but we work with young men and young women. So people that maybe not all of them, they have maybe like a real, let's say, formal education, but all of them, there are some talents, skills, or strong interest in sectors which are important in the field of sport for development and peace. So we are talking about people that maybe have an interest on coaching, on sport, but also people with interest on management or education, psychology, and so on. Because obviously when you talk about sport for peace and development, it's a combination of qualification and skills. So you need to build an integrated approach. So what we did is that we start, of course, from sport. That it's a very nice way to attract people. But then at the end, these courses, they become more courses of management. So actually we train and we prepare these youth on how to write a project, in our case in the sport field, but still how to write a project, how to prepare a budget, how to present a project, how to connect the dots, etc., etc. So at the end of the day, they think that they are participating in a sport project, and then at the end, actually, they're learning about some managerial, let's say, principles and concepts.
Thank you. You wanted to come in as well.
Yeah, sorry, Jan. So the unfortunate truth is that there are kids now that will spend all of their childhood in refugee camps. or in transit. And so this is very sad, but the number of years that people are on the road or in camp is been increasing. So one of the things that we did actually with the International Organization of Migration and with the Human Rights Office is to adapt the entrepreneurship policy framework for refugees. Because you can imagine that in these refugees, you have doctors, lawyers, engineers, you have educators, you have a lot of talent that is depressing to have all this talent is sitting there idle. So the question is, how do you help these people use their talent? So, you know, we want kids to be in school. That's another part of the UN working on that, but we're trying to help the young adults to be able to create and use the talent of the older and sometimes younger people to put at the service of solving the problem within the community itself. So you create an economy within these camps, because now they're spending some of them will spend all of their childhood in those camps.
Thank you so much, Chantaline. And we'll take one last question from the gentleman at the back. Well, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I am Ernesto from Brazil. Thank you. I'm Ernesto from Brazil. In the past 2 weeks, I've been researching about the International Youth Day and the opportunities we have with it. And I've written a document I would like to give to some of you after. And my question is, the International Youth Day offers us an opportunity to connect the youth globally and educate youth through engagement and activities. So if we had just one day to celebrate the youth in the year, what is the most impactful action that we could make, and what are the actions that you are willing to make within your organizations? Thank you.
Who wants to take this question? Dr. Carpentier.
Okay. So first, I'm happy to say that there is a group called the Children in Youth Major Group, which is you elect your own officials that represent you, and one of them is actually in the back. Oh no, he's gone. There was one former leader here. Oh, there's a few. Okay, that actually are branches throughout the world. So please reach out to them, because that does exist, and they've been very efficient in contributing to the UN, into the negotiation of the SDGs and now implementation. Doesn't mean all the job is done. You need to just get involved and connect to those. So what our organization can do, at UNCTAD, we do believe the youth voice need to be at the table in these international regimes that are being negotiated. We have a global youth forum that we do every time we bring member states together, we bring the youth together. So we get the voice of the youth on entrepreneurship, trade, investment policies, on competition policy, consumer protection policy, because these are areas that are a bit more complex and macroeconomics, and you don't necessarily think about them, but it's extremely important for you to be aware of them, because they do affect everything else that's micro. So that's what we do. And I'm also an advocate of the youth as a former major group coordinator. So if you have better idea, bring them on.
Okay. Kate, you wanted to come in on this as well?
Yeah, so we have a beautiful platform that Google helped us develop, which is called our Billion Acts of Peace platform. And it's a website where we try to engage people in actually creating projects and acts of peace to make the world a better place. And why I bring that up is because we have the potential to create campaigns on that. So I would love to collaborate with many of you, maybe some of the alumni here too from the youth program, so that we can create some campaigns that you all feed in. It might be about these issues or whatever matters to you, and we can get the rest of the world to sort of, you know, on a certain day, what do we want people to do, right? So you have to just decide what the campaign is, and we can do these throughout the year. So we just got back from Costa Rica, where we brought 17 young people from the United States who had been in the front line of gun violence in America. So these were young people from Parkland High School, Columbine, who she's not very young anymore, she's 33, Santa Fe, Texas, Newtown, and we brought them all to Costa Rica to meet with Oscar Arias, the former president of Costa Rica, who also was a Nobel Peace Prize winner and created peace in Central America. And they sat in his living room and they talked about how to create change, and they had some great ideas ideas coming out of that. So that's one specific example. So now on our platform, we'll create a campaign for them of what they specifically want the public to do, right, around that very specific issue. So I think that using the Billion Acts of Peace, it's just billionacts.org, and work with us, and we can just be a tool for you.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid we're running out of time, but I will ask for one last round of opportunities. I'm really sorry, we've run out of time for questions, but I would like to get all our panelists and each of you in 30 seconds to give us your 2 key recommendations for promoting global citizenship education. And we'll start with José.
Thank you so much.
Literally 30 seconds, please.
Literally 30 seconds. It's really to give the platforms for the people, for the youth, to express themselves. And I think because then they will organize and know exactly what they should do in each and every moment. And for that, to work, of course, with the organizations, with the youth organization, but give them the tools, the platform where they can really express themselves in order to get and to achieve to the decision makers before they become themselves decision makers, of course, to listen to them, because this is really what is necessary, and this is what we should do, and we should aim and work for. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Chantal.
Our work is more interconnected than ever. And we won't achieve the SDGs without global citizenship and each one of us doing our part. And we need a new narrative on globalization and trade and what it means to be together, as opposed to something based on solidarity as opposed to us versus them. So please help us create that new narrative of why together and why with diverse groups we are better than alone. And that start with youth and education and the empowerment of all of the youth, including those that are furthest behind.
Brilliant. José Ángel.
Para nosotros la educación para la ciudadanía tiene que ser la respuesta para atender los grandes desafíos globales que en este momento tenemos. Grandes desafíos que se corresponden con una correcta gestión de las migraciones, una sociedad que sea interpretada y que interprete la realidad desde concepciones feministas. Son la mitad de la población, merecen la mitad de todo. Y una educación que permita un modelo de desarrollo que genere igualdad de oportunidades presentes, igualdad de oportunidades de manera duradera y sostenible, e igualdad de oportunidades que puedan ser construidas sin robárselas a las generaciones que vienen del futuro.
Can be built along with the future generations. And as said by our Secretary General.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Kate.
Never too
All
late
right,
to start and think
I have
again.
3 things. We need
Kate,
to all be working to inspire our young people, and that is that we're all role models. They're watching, right? So what are you buying? What are you doing? How are you conducting yourself? What are you standing up for? So be a role model, inspire the young people, work with them. If you're a young person, you got this, right? We're here for you. Inspire, educate. So you have a lot of skills. What are you doing right now to fix the world with the skills you have, right? And where are you working with young people in your life, right? The third is act. Where's the service learning curriculum? So you need to show up, right? And you just start to get engaged, volunteer an hour with a youth organization in your community. It doesn't have to be a lot. So, and then I invite you all to join us at Peace Jam. We have this beautiful platform with these Nobel Peace Laureates, and it's built for everybody to be involved with. So let's use this tool, and I'm offering it to everybody. There's a way for us to collaborate and make sure that we've got you at our conferences. We're going to go to Qatar and do this big thing with Tandi Tutu and the Tutu desks, and maybe Peace Jam and all the rest of you. So we need to all be working together.
Thank you, Kate. Massimiliano.
Let's say two policy recommendations. The first one is to include as a cross-cutting topic, the topic of, let's say, civic education or humanitarian education in the formal official curricula, but not as a standalone hour that then is utilized maybe to recover the time lost in mathematics or something else, but as a cross-cutting, because you can instill, let's say, social values even when you teach mathematics or when you teach history, when you teach geography. So this should be everywhere cross-cutting. first recommendation, and second recommendation to keep promoting and to intensify policies aimed at facilitating and supporting youth mobility. I think that's a key. This is, I mean, I'm from European country. This is what gave us a sense of being European. It was the Erasmus project. So the Erasmus project is a best practice that should be utilized across regions in many other angles of the world.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Your ideas have really given us food for thought. And as we go back, I would encourage all of you to hold on to all these ideas and basically take action and show up, as Kate said. Thank you so much to our panelists, and thanks to all of you. Thank you.